Hello, everyone. My name is Evan Grant, and I'm going to start off my presentation by just showing off this picture that I found in a headline that sort of sparked my interest for this term project. This is a mass stranding event. This occurred just along the coast of Tasmania in Australia back in September of this year. So what this made me think of is, why do these stranding events happen? There's a lot of different reasons that have been suggested in the past, but none of them have been super concrete, and people are still unsure. So I sort of wanted to look at maybe one of the possible reasons as to why these things are happening. So my hypothesis is that whales that use echolocation, such as sperm whales that you can see in this photo here, are probably being affected by sea freight activity. Echolocation is something that toothed whales mostly use to navigate through the sea, as well as search out prey. If there's lots of sea freighters occurring along the coastline, you'd think that perhaps this is affecting how they navigate, and perhaps it's forcing them into shallower waters where they're being stranded. Um, so how am I going to test out this hypothesis? I grabbed some data from the OBIS CMAP website, where they have a lot of different data archives, different master data sets. So the one that I grabbed was the National Whale and Dolphin Sightings and Strandings database. This did not include strandings despite the name, but it includes sighting events. So sighting events could mean one whale, could mean two whales, but all these sighting events are basically occurring in between the years of 1979 to 1999. I'm plotting these events against shipping activity, and the way I'm determining shipping activity is by taking the Australian government's publicly accessible data that labels different amounts of kilotonnage that are shipped in between major cities in between different years. So the data set that I'm looking at is also from 1979 to 1999. However, I'm making a small adjustment to the data here myself for simplicity's sake. Australia's sea freight activity, the data does exist, but it's quite convoluted across many different documents. Um, and it's pretty difficult to compile. So for simplicity's sake, I've just taken the master data table that includes sea freight, road freight, and rail freight, and combined them into one and just called it sea freight, kilotonnage shipped between cities. I'm using that as a proxy for shipping activity. So the idea is that the more weight there is being transferred in between cities, the more likely that it is that there's more sea freights having to go back and forth between these cities. So when we look at this data, this is the matrix that we get. Most of the variables that we want to be looking at here is time in terms of years, total kilotonnage transferred in between cities, total whale sighting events. That's what the total whale is there in the middle. HWC just indicates humpback whale sighting events. That was one of the species that I wanted to look at, even though it's not a toothed whale. I wanted to compare it to sperm whale sighting events, which is the SWC that you see in the bottom right corner. We're going to zoom into a couple of these in the next few slides. So the graph here that we see on the left is total kilotonnage shipped by freight in Australia over time between the years of 1979 to 1999. Has this very interesting concave shape that we see. Lots of shipping earlier in the timeline here, dips down, and then increases as we get later into the timeline. The graph on the right here is more interesting because this is sort of what we want to see. We want to see is the number of sighting events, aka population levels or trends in a way, changing as we see more weight being transferred in between cities. So population trends against shipping activity is sort of the proxies that we're using here for these two values. So we can see here that whales aren't really sighted any different amount when we increase our kilotonnage. They don't really seem to follow a certain trend. There are a couple outliers here, but they don't really seem to care. Now that we move down, this is the same graph on the left here that I had on the above slide on the left. And the graph here on the right is looking at the sighting events over time. Once again, this is sort of a proxy for what the trends are looking like in the population. The idea is that the higher the population is, the more likely we are to see whales. So this gives us a vague estimate of trends over time. Sighting effort is assumed to be constant throughout the study. So we can see the humpback whale sighting events or population trends seem to look like this, very dramatic up and down shifts. Um, Over time, sperm whale sighting events seem to peak at around 1981 and then decrease and never recover. So can we correlate this to shipping activity along the Australian coastline? Well, maybe we could. It's not directly correlated, it seems, but this could be one of the compounding effects that we see when stranding events occur. This, you know, there could be many reasons why we're not seeing as many sperm whale sightings or not having as many sperm whale sighting events during these years. It could be because of change in weather patterns. It could be, the literature says that solar storms affecting the magnetic field could be affecting their migration routes and where they end up. But this could possibly imply that we're maybe seeing an increase in shipping activity is preventing sperm whales from staying in that area, and perhaps it's affecting their population numbers overall. This could be one of the effects that we're seeing compound into stranding events. So what can we infer? Well, I think we can infer that perhaps sea freight activity is maybe affecting where our sperm whales are ending up and how often we're seeing them. And how often we're seeing them is kind of correlating back to what their population trends are looking like. So it seems that as our shipping activity is increasing, we're kind of stopping to see sperm whales. So in that way, we're kind of saying that the population seems to be lower as our sea freight increases. So could this be could this be a reason as to why stranding events are occurring? Well, maybe it could be. This could be adding on to the different compounding effects that are resulting in stranding events. So yeah, thank you for listening.